Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean and Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I'm a certified health coach, trainer, and author. And this podcast is for middle-aged men and women looking to optimize their health and get their bodies back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago. I will give you simple, actionable items to get long-term sustainable results. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I hope you had a great weekend. Happy Tuesday. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, can't believe we're almost getting into fall here. And hopefully you listened to my last interview with Dr. Gary Fettke. We talked all about eating seasonally. We talked about ketosis, his basics of weight loss, and much more. So it was a great interview. I definitely recommend that, Dr. Gary Fettke, and that's episode 173. So definitely getting up there in the episodes. And I hope you're enjoying these micro podcasts. Today, I want to touch on, does coffee break a fast? This is a common question that comes up a lot, and I've touched on it in the past a bit, but I thought I would revisit it a little bit. One of the things I think that coffee and caffeine in particular can really be used for is sort of a pre-workout. I talked with Menno Henselmans, definitely check out that interview. And we touched on using caffeine and coffee strategically before your workouts, rather than spending all this money on these pre-workout drinks, because there's some studies showing that there's really no difference between these expensive pre-workout drinks and just having some black coffee. So that might be something you might want to try or implement. I think if you're relying on a stimulant like coffee all the time in the morning, right when you get up, I think that's an issue. And it can be, because if you're really relying on any stimulant for too often, then that's just going to throw everything off, right? And that'll throw your circadian rhythm, your normal, like, normally when you get up, obviously you have a rush of cortisol. The last thing you want to do is just drink coffee right away. Let your body get up, give it some time, maybe a couple hours before you have that cup of coffee. But does it break a fast? Technically, if it doesn't have calories, it doesn't break a fast, right? So black coffee really won't break your fast. So I would, use it strategically. Don't abuse it. I guess that would be my message here. And caffeine can be a stimulant to increase metabolic rate and potentially fat loss. There's been some studies around that. So there are benefits to caffeine and using it strategically. It also can blunt appetite. So I sometimes use it. If there's times where, you talk about fasting, you don't want to overdo fasting, obviously. But if there's times where I'm just like, I know I'm not really hungry, I'm just sort of could use a little bit of something, I might have a black coffee. I make my own, and I recommend that for you, because if you heard about some of the things that could be in just a normal cup of coffee that you'd get from just a restaurant, or even like a Dunkin' Donuts, there could be some downsides to drinking coffee. I mean, they could be loaded with pesticides like glyphosate. There could be mold and these toxins. So I think this is something you should really, if you're drinking coffee, my wife loves coffee, and I bought a really cool coffee maker. It's called Spin, and it's, we're buying organic, certified, mold-free, fair trade brands, and using that as our coffee, because if it's something that you're, having every day, I definitely recommend that. Because who knows how they're filtering the coffee in Starbucks and any other places that you're getting it from. So keep an eye on that. But getting back to the question, does it break a fast? Like I said, no. I think if you're adding a bunch of fat and milk or cream, well, yeah, that's obviously has calories. That's going to break a fast. The one thing that caffeine does is it's going to really release those stress hormones, cortisol, and that release of cortisol might increase glucose and be released in the bloodstream. So you may register on like a CGM, which I'm wearing right now. There you go, if you were watching on YouTube. So you can sort of monitor that if you do have a CGM and see how these different drinks or foods affect your blood sugars. I don't go crazy with it, but it's good to see every once in a while. So if you're adding milk, sugar, MCT oil, your body will switch from burning fat to burning the energy that you just consumed from whatever type of coffee mix you've added in. So I wouldn't go crazy with that unless you consider that like a meal. You look at like these Starbucks drinks, these coffee milkshakes. I mean, talk about just like that's like a breakfast. That's like a dessert. So if you're having a big whatever, I don't know, frappuccino or these coffee milkshakes, I would definitely not go crazy on that. Maybe just treat it as a dessert. So that's the main thing with coffee is I think it depends. I think you can use it strategically, and these stimulates within coffee, like obviously caffeine can has been shown to increase metabolic rate. All right, which will give you more energy. It'll sort of might hike up blood pressure a little bit, but it'll help you perform in the gym. And I think if you really use those stimulants and just find some balance between that and not using them, I think it's a good way to go. And you don't need to buy an expensive pre-workout drink. So, any other downsides, like I said, keep an eye on the type of coffee you're drinking. Like I said, you don't want ones that are obviously loaded with these normal brands, loaded with pesticides, which could include glyphosate and mold and toxins. So coffee is safe for about everyone. And I would just say it's one of those things where don't overdo it because, you're just overdo the adrenals and, just release of stress hormones too much can be, just too much for the system and in the long term can cause fatigue. So, I would say if you're having black coffee, it's not going to break your fast. It probably won't even kick you out of ketosis. But if you do have milk or cream, that does contain calories. And I think if that's going to help you maybe in the beginning, of a fast, keep it going. If you want to add a little bit of that, that's fine. I just wouldn't overdo it. You can almost use these as like fasting training wheels just to help you get through because it will help curb appetite for sure. So that's all I wanted to really touch on today. I would also keep an eye on these artificial sweeteners as well. I wouldn't go crazy. You can maybe use some stevia in there as well. But again, these could cause a slight insulin response, which again is not the end of the world. But if you talk about just simply breaking a fast, keep it to black, and you'll be good to go. So hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions regarding breaking a fast. Remember, fasting is a stressor. You don't need to overdo it with that, but it's definitely a great tool to have, just like coffee and caffeine. So use it as a tool. Don't overdo it. And let me know if you have any questions. Brian@briangrin.com. Have a great rest of the week, and I will talk to you on Friday. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.